our friends who are connected via internet. This is a first time for us. I've explained it for everyone in the room. We usually don't do things so technologically savvy, but we're excited to be able to link to you guys online. I just wanted to maybe start off by saying a brief introduction as how I know Richard Taylor and how this came to be. It's about 2 years ago exactly that I met Richard in New York. There was a seminar, a symposium that was being hosted by Kathy Greenberg, who's a photographer, author, teacher of sociology, and advocate when it comes to dementia care. She's gone around the world and taken photographs of people who are affected by dementia. And Richard at the symposium was a guest speaker. So I had the honor of meeting him at this symposium. And let's just say we became good friends. And he's a really wonderful guy, and he's extremely busy online or writing books, creating DVDs, and also advocating on behalf of people with dementia. Richard and your friends at the Le Brain Cafe on your end, I just wanted to let you know that the cafe here in Montreal was started in September of 2012. So it's about 1.5 years that we've been hosting our monthly get-togethers. And it was spearheaded by a caregiver that was connected with the Alzheimer Society, but also with the Atwater Library and Computer Center where we are. And she really pushed this initiative, and we've been fortunate ever since to host our monthly meetings. You're fortunate online not to have to deal with snow and cold weather. But everyone in the room today has faced cold weather and heaps of snow to make it here today. So we're really excited. Richard, I guess at this point I can pass it on to you. And we're excited to be able to talk with you today.
Well, it's our honor to welcome you into our cafe. We've been doing this for about 1 year now. And I just noticed that your cafe met on the same day that our cafe met on. So I thought it would be for us to have the two cafes meet together.
That's a great idea.
I think it would be a real neat idea if we would do this every couple of months, find some cafe around the world and just meet with that cafe and invite other cafes to join it. And we could really have worldwide cafes, and it'd be a way of meeting people all around the world who are living with similar disabilities, or caretakers or caregivers for people who are living with similar disabilities. Laura, you want to say a few words?
I just want to say welcome, and thank you for having this idea to join us together with the Montreal Memory Cafe. Our cafe is called Cafe Le Brain, and that's a name that one of our members came up with, Jan Pitts, thank you. And we meet once a month, I guess on the same day as you do. We have people here from several different countries in the world, from the United States, of course, from Canada, from England, and also from Switzerland. And from the States, we even have somebody from Hawaii. Am I missing any other countries? Anybody? Sometimes we have somebody from Hungary who manages to come as well. So we're an international cafe, and Richard, I like your idea of reaching out to other cafes and seeing if we can do this. Now that we know it works so well, I assume that you can all see us.
Laura, can I chip in, Laura?
Yep.
This is Peter here in sunny England. It's not snowing here, incidentally, Canada, but it's very, very wet. Everybody is walking around ankle deep in, if not knee deep, if not shoulder deep in water. So it's not very nice over here at the moment. I'm fortunate because I live high up on high ground. But if I happen to go lower, then I get extremely wet. I'm here, because I've been living with dementia now for 14 years, back in 2000. I first got my diagnosis of dementia with Lewy bodies. I'm a very active campaigner. Some of you will know that. Richard certainly knows it, and Jenny Jeannie, sorry, Jeannie. Jeannie knows, and one or two others know it. But we have only recently started to get together here in the UK, and we have a new group formed, which is actually called DEEP. I mean, DEEP is very appropriate in the current weather situation here, because everything is deep. But DEEP, in fact, stands for Dementia Empowerment and Engagement Project, and we are going UK-wide with this project now.
Oh, terrific.
So what I'm hoping to do as a result of taking part in today's conference, webinar, is to find out a little bit more as to how I can recruit my other friends in the UK to come and join you all.
Oh, that's great. Whoops, we got the ceiling. Sorry, I don't know whose ceiling that is. One thing that you'll notice, we're using a software called Zoom. Zoom is a really terrific video conferencing software that is pretty easy to use. But what's kind of funny about it is that whoever happens to be making the most noise at any one time is what the camera focuses on. So right then it was birds, sometimes it's dogs barking, sometimes it's, you know, people yelling in the background. So you might notice the camera switching around a little bit if that happens. So Peter, that sounds fabulous. The DEEP project is worth a webinar on its own. It's fabulous. Maybe you can say a couple of words about it, and then I think we probably should get into Richard's presentation.
Yeah. Can I just say one other thing? Mm-hmm. By profession, I'm an electronics and computer engineer, so I'm very happy with technology, and I fiddle about with it still, even in my dotage. So at my advanced age of 70-something or other, 9 I think now, I still play around with technology fairly a lot. So I've told you a little bit about DEEP. DEEP is an intention of trying to bring together all sorts of groups around the country that have formed, people with dementia, their carers, bring them together in a general network in the UK. And then I'm keen that we broaden this out, because dementia isn't UK specific, nor is it America or Canada specific or anywhere else specific. It's worldwide, and our aims and aspirations are to link together with our friends no matter where they happen to be in the world. So this is my aim in the UK, and this seems an excellent vehicle to do it with. And Zoom is an excellent piece of software. I happen to use other pieces of software for other webinars, WebEx and things like that, but Zoom is absolutely first class, and I see no reason why many of our member groups inside DEEP couldn't do that, either on a one-to-one basis, as some of you are, or in the case of the group in Canada that I'm looking at, on a one-to-many basis, so that you've got many people in the room with a common webcam looking at everybody, and obviously focusing in on one individual when it is their turn to speak. So I'm just going to sit here, make a few contributions, which is very small, unusual for me, because I tend to talk too much, and just watch how things go.
Thank you, Peter. I'm going to email you separately from this meeting and to talk more about how we can reach out to DEEP and vice versa. Okay, maybe
okay,
we
thanks.
can meet. Okay, great. Richard, do you want to give an introduction to your presentation, or should I just bring up the PowerPoint right now, or what do you think?
You can just bring it up.
Okay.
I would say that if I am one of the grandfathers of advocacy for people with dementia, we have some great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers here with us today. And those are the people from DASNI, who were really the first group that I know that had an outreach beyond their own borders to try to get people to electronically be connected. And Peter is one of the founders of that organization. So I'm ready to go.
Are you seeing it? Look, do you see it?
Not yet, not yet.
Yeah, there it is. Oops, how do you get rid of that other little thing?
Well, this thing?
That's a familiar landmark.
Okay, now, where do I do start slideshow here? Hang on a second.
Good choice on pictures.
slideshow.
It looks like it's
Beginning.
Yeah. But that'd be Zoom.
Are you seeing it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
Who can tell us what building that is?
The Hello Building?
It's the oratory.
It's the oratory, St. Joseph's Oratory.
Quite a library. Okay.
Hey, Richard?
Yeah.
Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. This is my shot at French.
You missed out Bonne Nuit.
Is that right?
Maybe afternoon?
Sorry, Richard, carry on.
Okay. Click. I'd like to thank the Alzheimer Society of Montreal for hosting this. They're really the hosts for this. It seems as if every country looks to other countries and says, gee, their association is so much more advanced than ours and they're doing so much more than ours. But I know we in the United States look to England and to Canada especially and say, gee, we wish we were more like the Canadians. And I've heard Canadians say to me, gee, we wish we were more like the Americans. Every society and association has their own strengths and weaknesses. But I must say you seem to be very open, or at least more open than we are, to involving people with dementia in more ways in your organization than we currently do in the United States. So thank you for inviting us. Next slide. My name is Richard Taylor. I live in the United States of America, the state of Texas, and the city of Cypress. Texas is that, let's see if I can get, this is Texas down here. Can you see my cursor or not?
No.
Okay, Texas is the state in the middle of the United States at the bottom of it, the big state there. We're the largest state other than Alaska, and we just don't recognize them. So we're the largest state in the Union. We are the only state that entered the United States as its own nation. We were independent from Mexico, and this is the state next to it. And Houston is where that blue area is down in the right-hand corner there. It's right on the Gulf of Mexico. And I live in a little, oh, that's good, yeah. I live in a little suburb, well, it's close. I live in a little suburb north of Houston. Okay. Next.
Having fun.
Next.
I'm trying. Oh dear.
The blinds are up.
Oh, there we go.
Just quickly now to catch you up in my life. Where was I in my life when I got it? I was 58 years old. I was a psychologist, very happy in my life. How did I know I had it? My daughter came home at Christmas one time and essentially identified the 10 early warning signs of Alzheimer's to myself and to my wife. She saw me as being slightly different than I was. In fact, she said to me, "You're not my father, you're somebody else." And I had managed to cover it up with the rest of my family, but not with my daughter, who's a nurse. I went to my doctor and I said, my daughter's seen some things in me and I don't know what it might be. And the first words out of his mouth were, "Don't worry, we have a pill for Alzheimer's." Well, I was shocked at that. It took a year for them to diagnose me. In those days, it was still a rule out diagnosis. So I had to stop eating aluminum or licking aluminum pans. I couldn't eat any paint off the walls anymore.
Richard, Yeah, you're faded. You need to get close to your microphone again or something.
Okay. I think I had my thing covered up too.
That's better. There we go.
Okay.
I think you were saying they had to stop licking aluminum pans.
Yeah, I had to stop eating lead paint. I had to watch my thyroid gland, and when they couldn't find anything else wrong with me, they said one day, Richard, you have dementia, probably of the Alzheimer's type. The diagnosis process, I'm sure for most of the people in the audience here, was like being in purgatory. We didn't do anything about my symptoms. We had to wait for the doctor to make an official diagnosis. That was a mistake, and I'll talk about that later on. Then what happened? Well, I cried a lot. I actually cried for about 2 weeks straight. I just couldn't stop crying. And I didn't know why I was crying. I didn't know what dementia was. I didn't know what Alzheimer's was. I'd never heard of them before. I opened my mouth and I let Mr. Google shovel in about 1 million web pages. And what came out was pretty sad for me. No one seemed to know exactly the answers to the questions I wanted, but it was pretty depressing. So I got depressed, and I built my own invisible closet. I closed down my practice. I stopped teaching. I stayed home. I had some driving problems, so I stopped driving. And essentially, I lost my purpose in my life. And I was so afraid that there was going to be some curtain that was going to fall down between me and the rest of the world, and I wouldn't know it had happened, that every night I started to write. And then I would read it the next morning. And if I could still make sense out of it, why, then I knew that I was still okay. Now, it seems pretty primitive as a measure right now, but then I thought it was pretty effective. And to make another long story shorter, all those writings ended up being in a book that I didn't intend to write. Somebody gave it to a publisher. They just called me. And in those days, other than, and I can't remember her name now, the woman in Australia, who was really my forerunner.
Christine Bryden.
Christine Bryden.
Bryden, yes. No one with dementia had written a book that got any press or anything. And what happened with my book was after it was published, people started to call me and said, hey, we see you wrote a book. You must be interesting and smarter than we thought you were. Could you come and read part of the book? So I started going around on my own nickel and reading the book to people. And one day somebody said to me, well, we want to give you $500 just to pay for some of your expenses. Won't you just please accept that? And my wife was in the room, and she heard the offer, and she turned to me and she said, take it. So I took it. And that began my speaking career. And through no plan or design of my own, I've had the privilege and the pleasure of speaking all over the world. And because I was a kind of an internet nerd myself to begin with, I started to build up a mailing list. As I would speak, I would ask people for their mailing list, for their mailing email list. And in fact, when a new president was hired for the American National Alzheimer's Association, I got the idea that maybe we should all send him an email on the day he came in. And so he got about 500 emails that day from people with dementia all over the world, actually. And it did get his attention. It didn't hold it very long, but at least it got his attention. So that's how I got where I am today. Now I struggle with what I should do because my symptoms are such that to make up this, for instance, I fish for words all the time, this PowerPoint presentation, it's taken me 3 days and until 5 o'clock this morning. At one time I had 3 PowerPoint presentations being built at the same time on my screen and I didn't realize it. And I kept jumping from PowerPoint presentation to PowerPoint presentation, adding one slide here and then one slide here, and then just being aware that I had two presentations, so then I would try to put them all together. Anyway, it took me forever to get this done. So I really don't know what I'm going to do next. I'm beginning to speak a little. Oh, and I had cancer. I came down with esophageal cancer in last November, which took the wind out of my sails for about a year. So now I'm back. Laura and I had the idea to use the internet and to try to organize it to get people with dementia to be more connected with each other. And our original goal was to just model programs like this, and that people then in different countries would say, well, if they can do it in America, we could do that in Germany, or we could do that in Switzerland, or we could do that in Canada. And so that we would just pilot programs and spin them off. So far, we haven't done a lot of spinning, but we do have a lot of programs and a lot of ideas. I run a group online. There's a couple of our group members here online with us today. Laura runs a group online. We're setting up interest groups where, for instance, people who are in each of our states and are helping our states to write Alzheimer's plans could meet with each other. And John Sanborn is on our line, and he's going to organize that for us. And we just came up with this idea of trying to connect internet cafes. So as, golly, I'm terrible with people's names. Peter said, it's pretty limitless what we can do with this thing. It's just a matter of making it happen. And it's so easy for it to work now. When we first began, the pictures were terrible. The sound was all broken up. And we had a lot of trouble with people getting bumped off lines. That never happens anymore.
Don't say that. Touch wood, touch wood, touch wood, quick.
you Canadians, you could have people who couldn't make your internet cafe just plug into you whenever you had an internet cafe, and they could just join you if you just set up one computer screen. It's just endless, the possibilities in this. Next slide. I got to get my blinds to open a little faster. What do I know now that I wish I'd known the day before I was diagnosed? The strategy my family used, and I think many families use, was we waited until we crossed bridges before we came to healing. That is, we didn't talk about driving, we didn't talk about money, we didn't talk about intimacy, we didn't talk about finances. We just waited until I screwed up bad, and then we had a family meeting, and they decided what they were going to take away from me, and I felt bad, they felt bad, and we moved on. The one thing that I wish I had known is that when Dr. Alzheimer's or Dr. Lewy body or Dr. Vascular Dementia or whoever has visited your home, or maybe two of them visited your home, when they show up, your life has changed, and there's just no way around it. And waiting for the worst to happen before you pretend like the worst could happen just makes the worst worse. And unfortunately, most of us are not in the habit of being so open with each other in our family that we can talk about things that we didn't talk about for years and years and years. So the most important thing I think I could say to people, and I'll probably say this 10 times while I'm talking, is waiting before you cross those bridges, before you come to them, is a terrible strategy. We need to be more open with each other. Secondly, hope wasted a lot of time and energy and ended up disappointing my family and I. About a year ago, I wrote a piece that said I'd given up hope. And people were just aghast. They thought I was going to commit suicide because I'd given up hope. This was my announcement I was going to end my life. But what I saw happening with hope is, first of all, hope presupposes that today isn't what you hoped it to be. Today isn't very good, but I sure hope tomorrow is better. Well, for most of us in our lives, tomorrow is not going to be better, at least appreciably better. It might be a little better. It might be a little worse. But if I spend today wishing tomorrow was going to be better, wishing my life was younger, wishing my kids were nicer to me, wishing I had more money, wishing I was shorter, wishing I didn't have so much gray hair, it detracts from the value of today. And so I found it wasted a lot of energy. And when I see all these campaigns to raise money for Alzheimer's are based on hope, one of our U.S. representatives said, well, we've got to give these poor people hope. That's all they have. Well, no, that's not true. All we have is today. Hope is about tomorrow. And we all may or may not have a tomorrow. I could get hit by a dog. I could get hit by a car. My dog could bite me and I have rabies. There's lots of ways my life could end tomorrow. But right now I have today. And so I encourage people, I don't want to get into all the religious ramifications of not having hope for life after death or being a hopeless soul. But I want people to focus more on living in today. What else I learned was everyone's going to die. It'll happen sooner rather than later than they expected. I was afraid of dying. I think that's why I cried. I didn't know I was afraid of dying. I was one of these progressive, burn me up in a cardboard box and say goodbye to me, and that's it. Although I did want a memorial service 30 days later, but I even abandoned those hopes when my brother told me he might be fishing on the day that I had scheduled my own memorial service. So I think this insight is key because I think death becomes more real to everybody, especially to caregivers. Now, it's real to everybody, we just don't acknowledge it. We just don't respond to it. And when some event like this happens in our lives, when a friend dies, when we are diagnosed with cancer, then all of a sudden we start worrying about death and we wonder if we're ready for death. Well, I don't know that we're ever ready for death unless we're worn ourselves out. But we're all going to die. And there's at least in the United States now, there's a tendency that when people want to raise money for Alzheimer's, the first thing they remind all the potential donors is, you know, everybody who has Alzheimer's is going to die. Well, that's just to scare you into donating some money so that maybe you won't die. Maybe they'll find a cure for it and you can live forever. Well, that's just not going to happen for any of us. And it's a wrong-headed thing to do, but it's something that we have to talk about. We have to get it out in the open. I also discovered that I need to live a purposeful and purpose-filled life. By a purposeful life, I mean, I have a reason for opening my eyes in the morning. And that reason is because I have things to do every day. Now, when I go visit people in Alzheimer's community, I ask them, why did you wake up this morning? And inevitably, they tell me the reason they woke up is because if they don't wake up, somebody else is going to wake them up. They don't have any personal reason themselves for waking up. They don't have to go to work. They don't have to dress themselves. They don't have to put their clothes away. They don't have to do the laundry. They don't have to cook. They don't even have to wipe their own butts if they don't want to. They just pull a cord and somebody comes rushing in and helps you pull your pants back up. They don't have purposes to their lives. And I think that happens to people not just who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it happens to older people who retire. They don't know what to do with their time. They can't wait to retire. And then once they retire, they don't know what to do. Well, sometimes we know what to do, but we can't do it by ourselves. And unfortunately, other people are disabling us rather than enabling us. That is, they're taking things away from us rather than helping us to do the things that we want. So we lose our purpose. And we lose our purpose, we lose a purpose-filled life. And so we fill it with entertainment. We play bingo. We read magazines, we do gardening, we do crossword puzzles. We do a lot of things to stay active, and there's nothing wrong with doing things to stay active. But is it your purpose in life to stay active, or do you want to stay active for a reason? And so I would urge each of you to think of a reason why you're alive and live that reason every day. That's the reason why you get up every day. Next, my needs as a human being will never die until about 2 minutes after I draw my last breath. And as a corollary to that, my needs as a human being will never change until about 2 minutes after I draw my last breath. People think that the worse our symptoms get, the fewer our needs become. The more difficult we have in communicating to people, the more we don't have a need to communicate with people. That's not true. It's not true that we don't need friends even in the last stage of dementia. It's not true that we don't need a self-image and feel good about ourselves in the middle stages of dementia. We all know that, those who are living with dementia, because we mourn the loss of those needs. But other people don't seem to tune into that, because they see us as fading away, as drifting away, as half empty. They think our needs are drifting away too. And so we end up with yes-no conversations with people. Nobody ever asks my opinion anymore about things. They just ask, do you want to do this? You want to eat that? You want to go here? I'm not engaged with people the way I used to be. So these are some of the things I wish I'd known the day before I was diagnosed. Next slide. What else do I know now? Oh, what do I know now? This is your update. That I wish I'd known the day before I was diagnosed. Hell, this is the same slide. Never mind. Next one. Any of you who went to school, especially college, and took any psychology courses, probably came across a fellow named Abraham Maslow. And he came up with a hierarchy of needs. He said all human beings have certain needs. And this regardless of where you live, how old you are, how close or near you are to death or to after birth, what kind of disabilities you have. We all have basic needs. That is, we have needs that are survival needs. And those are associated with safety needs. We all need to feel like we're safe. We all need to feel like we've got a square meal coming from time to time. We all need to feel like we can be warm, and in England's case, dry. We all have those needs, and they don't lessen simply because our ability to meet those needs lessen. And another thing that Maslow told us is that we meet these lower level needs when they're met, then higher level needs meet. So as soon as we feel pretty good about where we're living and how we're living, then we run into all these psychological needs. We need friends. We need love. We need to give love. We need to have friends. We need a sense of self-esteem. And those things are bottomless pits for many of us. They're never fully met. But yet, as we get older, and as we self-isolate ourselves from younger people and from our families, and we don't have the abilities to meet those needs as easily as we did because we don't have as much money, we're not as connected, we're hanging around with a lot of old people who have the same needs and inabilities to meet those needs as we do. Those needs are always tugging at us. And then there's self-actualization needs. We do need from time to time to feel like we're on top of our game. We need to feel really human. We need to see and feel a sunrise. We need to feel and feel a religious moment in a church. We need to sing some old hymns together. We need to make love. We need to hold each other. We need those moments. Now, if you're living somewhere where you're cold and drafty and you don't know where your next meal is, you're not so interested in those higher level needs. You're mostly interested in your lower level needs. And finally, if we get all those lower level needs met, we need higher level needs. And the highest level need is what Maslow called peak experiences. We don't have those too often in life, but we don't have any hope of having those once the cloak of Alzheimer's or dementia has been draped over our heads. Next page, please. Click. This is just another way of looking at those needs. There's 15 different ways to, if you're interested in these needs, when you say to people, you know, I got needs. Well, this is one way to graphically show them what those needs are, for them to understand what the dynamics of needs are. Because they say, well, Mom, we're meeting all your needs. We're paying $3,000 a month for you to live here. You get fresh flowers every day. They do all your laundry for you. The meals are pretty nice here. There's a lot of nice people around here. Yeah, but those aren't all of my needs. And you have to understand that when my lower level needs are met, I still have higher level needs. Even if I'm sitting in a wheelchair mute, as a human being, I still have those those higher level needs. Now, we haven't figured out yet how to meet those needs. Hell, we haven't even figured out how to talk to people who won't talk back to us, or who what they call mumble or jabber or talk nonsense back to them. Now, who's in a better place to figure these things out? Us, people living with dementia, or our carers, or professionals, or physicians, or people who call themselves experts in this area? I see this as the real failure of dementia right now, is that we're so focused in finding a cure that all our good minds are focusing on that. And all our good minds sort of whisper to us, well, just stay quiet, you know? Eventually we'll straighten your life out for you. You may be dead by then, but maybe somebody who's born now, they can benefit from our lack of inattention to you now. I think that's wrong. I think that's morally wrong to say with people with disabilities, because we haven't figured out how to solve your disability or how to aid you in your disability, your job is to just sit in the corner and be quiet and let the disability consume you while we're working on it. Trust us, we're working on it day and night. I don't think they're working on it day and night, people with dementia. They've been 25 years researching for a cure, and they still haven't come close to finding it. Okay, next one. My message, and I know we have a lot of caregivers in the audience, and this is something that I found on the website is of the Alzheimer's Society of Montreal is, are you sure you want to delete all the people who have been selected to live with dementia? Because that's what happens to us. Slowly but surely, as our symptoms become worse, More and more of us is deleted. Lots of it gets deleted the minute we tell somebody we have dementia. They delete all the visits to our house then. They delete most of their phone calls to us. As we get worse in our symptoms and they become more obvious, they begin to delete face-to-face conversations because they don't know what to say to us. They're embarrassed that they might ask us a question and we don't have an answer, or we give an answer that they don't understand. So they delete that part of our relationship. And finally, we get to the point where when we can't remember their names, they essentially delete us and move us somewhere because they think we're gone. And we're only gone when you move us out of the house. We're still there. We're still human beings. So my message to people who don't live with the symptoms of dementia, who live with someone else who has dementia, is to stop deleting parts of us as we lose the ability to bring them up on the screen every time ourselves. Next page. I'm actually moving. I believe that the words that we use, the language that we use to talk about dementia, and specifically Alzheimer's, is contaminated. It's contaminated in that words mean things to different people. If you think of a word as a map, you know, the map is not the territory. If you gave somebody a map of Canada, people wouldn't say, oh, well, so this is what Canada looks like. They would know it's a map. But if you give people a label and you say, this is Richard Taylor and he has dementia, probably Alzheimer's type, people assume that map, that word, Alzheimer's, means Richard Taylor. So where do they get what the word Alzheimer's means? How do they know what it means if they've never heard it before? Well, sometimes they had a grandfather or a great-grandfather who was in the back bedroom. I had an aunt who was in my back bedroom, and we said she had hardening of the arteries when in fact she had Alzheimer's. I imagine she had these plastic tubes in her head that were turning yellow from age and were just becoming brittle, and blood was leaking out of them. But in effect, she had Alzheimer's disease. The map is not the territory. When we talk about a cure, what do we really mean when people come to your door and ask for money and they say, would you donate to cure Alzheimer's? Do they mean we're going to cure Alzheimer's like we cured polio, where when we finally figured out what the hell caused polio, within 2 weeks we were able to cure it in people? Now, did that mean we cured it in people who had polio, who were living with polio? Well, yes, we did, but we didn't cure them of how polio had ravaged their bodies. And in fact, we still have people living, older people now, in iron lungs in the United States. We still have people who are living with the symptoms of polio, and yet we claim that we've cured polio. I had cancer, and cancer has an interesting way that they deal with the word cure, because I suspect many of you have worn something pink or purple to cure cancer or to cure Alzheimer's. And the way cancer says it's cured you is when you don't have any active cancer cells in you for 5 years. Now that is my definition of a cure. My definition of a cure is you don't have cancer anymore, and you won't have it the rest of your life. Actually, cancer has taken the easy way out and said, well, we're probably never going to cure cancer, but we can't scare people into donating to cure cancer unless we use the word cure. So with Alzheimer's, we use the word cure. Now, is a cure going to grow back my synapses that have died and withered? Is cure going to grow back my brain that is shrinking? Is it going to reorganize and restructure the hippocampus in my brain? Probably not for hundreds of years yet. That's too complicated for us to even imagine it happening. But yet that's how we've we've contaminated the word cure. So we have to be real careful when we talk to people about what we mean by what we say. We have to ask them what their map looks like. What does it mean to you when I tell you I have Alzheimer's? We tell them what it means to us, and they're thinking, oh, too bad, you just don't know it, but you're fading away already. You don't even know what you're talking about, because I know what Alzheimer's is. It's about being half full. I know what dementia is. It's a death sentence. You'll lose your soul. No, the map is not the territory. It's just a word. And sometimes always, it's not always all the territory. Even if it were some of the territory, that is, I have symptoms that are common with other people. I have disabilities that are common with other people, and maps may cover that in both of us. But it's not all of me. I am still Richard, damn it, and I'm always going to be Richard. Now, I struggle with saying to people, oh, there's my Alzheimer's, or that's your, my wife is fond of saying, well, that's your Alzheimer's talking. Well, it's actually me that's doing the talking. My lips are moving. It's me that is saying something. And I don't know if you can cut out the Alzheimer's part and keep it in the icebox so you can have a conversation without Alzheimer's. It's just a part of us, but it is a part of us. It's not a separate part of us. And if people would just learn that, like, the part of us that we were when we were teenagers is not a part of us anymore, but how many of us mourn the loss of that? How many of us mourn the part of us that was the reckless 20-year-old when we met our wives or husbands? Some of us may mourn that sometimes. But generally speaking, none of us look back on those as the golden years. These are supposed to be our golden years. And then to complicate things even further, we try to understand maps by using other maps. So we use more words. And what happens is we get farther and farther and farther away from listening to each other. We get farther and farther away from feeling for each other and with each other. And we get farther and farther away from our own humanity. And we become all about words. And so we go to Alzheimer's conferences, and there's lots of people there who've got lots of words to use, lots of letters after their names, lots of advice for us, lots of maps for us. But seldom do we see someone stand up and hold up a map that's our map and says, hi, I'm Richard, and I have Lewy body dementia. And I've had it for 18 years. And damn it, I'm not dead yet. I'm Richard Taylor, and I've had dementia, probably the Alzheimer's type, for about 10 years now. And I'm not dead yet. And so what happens is people start making up maps. Oh, well, maybe he doesn't have Alzheimer's. Maybe he has some unknown sense of, or a type of dementia that's long-lived. I think everyone in this audience who's in the earlier stages of dementia at one time or another has confronted somebody who either said right to your face or acted as if they didn't believe you had dementia. Oh, you can't have dementia. You're not slobbering. Oh, you can't have dementia. You're not drooling or you're feeding yourself. I had one lady at a speech stand up and say, I've been watching you very, very carefully, and you haven't paused once to find a word. I don't think you have dementia, because everybody I know who has dementia pauses to find one word. I said, well, now you've met the first person who doesn't pause that has dementia. Just happens to have a lot of words and is good at BSing. So he can just keep talking even when he doesn't know what the word is. But even now I find myself, I run out of words. I have to say to people, I I can see I'm coming to a place where I'm not going to remember somebody's name. I just feel it, that I don't know that person's name, that I don't know the noun that I'm going to need at the end of this sentence. I don't know how I sense that, but I do. And so when I get up against this brick wall, I have to say to people, you know what I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Or people start guessing for me. I'm moving into that territory. My maps are becoming more crinkled than they used to be. Next. I'm about 2/3 of the way through this. A few words about memory, brains, research, and brain science. At one time, we thought this was how simple the brain was. This is Homer Simpson, a cartoon character here. And we thought the brain was all segmented into places. And what did they call that when you could have a map of the brain and you knew your feet were located up here and your mouth was over here? And the science of reflexology, that's what it was called. We've gotten a little more sophisticated about that. And one of the things we're starting to understand more about is memory. Something that I don't think we talk about much, but we all share a common symptom of having a less reliable memory. Next slide. Is your memory like a DVD or a videotape? Do you hear things like a 45 record? I threw that in for the older members of the crowd.
Yes.
Or an MP3 file, that's for the younger members of the crowd. Do we have photographs in our memory? Some people say they have a photographic memory. Do we have a whole memory? There's this view, I think, that people have that when you remember something, some little light bulb, a very little LED hanging at the end of some dendrite in your brain lights up. And when that lights up, it projects a picture in the back of your eyes, and that's what you remember. You remember you and your wife dancing, as is the case in this brain up here. Well, do we remember whole, or do we remember pieces of memory? Or is memory a puzzle that we have to put together? Is memory simply vague recollections? Or is memory slivers? Actually, memory is just sort of best guesses. It's reconstruction. We've pretty much decided that memories are not held in any specific, in just one part of the brain. They're all over the brain. We know we can train the brain to learn memories, put memories in different parts of the brain when strokes have affected our memories. It all depends on us being able to not put so much stress on our brain to come up with a photograph that we can use our brain to remember things. And I think in our society, there's too much emphasis on remembering things. And so when your memories begin to fade, people think you're fading. You know, if you can't remember my name, if you can't remember what we did last night, if you can't remember where you lived 35 years ago, what you did in World War II, then you're slipping. No, it just means you can't remember it. Now, it seems from the brain science that we know that those slivers of memories, those parts of memories are still stored. But the problem is we can't bring them all together. We can't put them all in one piece. The part of our brains called the hippocampus that pulls our brain together, our thoughts together, our memories together. For instance, when you remember something, you remember the smell, you remember what it looked like, maybe you remembered what it tasted like, depends on how experimental you are in your love life. Maybe you remember what it felt like. And you put all those things together, and up comes a memory of the last time you made love. But that's really not a memory. It's a reconstruction of it. And what we don't realize is the last time you made love, what you heard, what you felt, what you smelled, what you tasted was influenced by the time before you did that and the time before you did that. So it's not the black and white system that we would like it to be. Everything is related to each other, and your brain has to sort out all these little LED flashes that are going on and put it together in a way that you can remember it. And Alzheimer's and Lewy body dementia and frontal lobe dementia, they all have trouble organizing that into something that they used to organize it in. And so when we can't organize it, people just assume we don't have memories. And when we don't have memories, we don't have feelings. When we don't have feelings, we don't have recollections or sense of self. And that's just not true. It all depends. It all depends on our brain. Next slide. Physically, it's the first, last, and always defined by activities of the hippocampus. The hippocampus is a little piece of a brain. Go to the next slide. I'll show you a picture of it. Well, forget that. I lost that slide. Go back to that last one I had. The hippocampus is, now what's it called? It's named after a Greek word that means seahorse, because it's a long little skinny piece of brain that's up underneath your brain. And the Greeks thought it looked like a pygmy seahorse. Greeks had more vivid imaginations than we do, evidently. But it's the device, it's the processor in your brain. It's the main processor. So all these little lights, all these little spurts of electricity, all these chemical reactions go through neural networks. They go into your language, language, your language of thought. We're running something in our head that we don't have access to, and that's our language of thought. That's where we translate all these little bits of information into maps so that we can talk about the maps, so we can see the maps. And what we produce is the outer view of ourselves. I hope you're getting all this stuff. This is covering an awful lot of stuff, but I don't think we talk enough as people with dementia about what's going on between our ears. We don't have any sense of control or what's happening to us. We just know things are getting worse there, and Q-tips aren't making it any better. We can't clean it out. We can't hit it, although once in a while we have moments when it all seems to fall into place. That's when our hippocampus is operating on all 8 cylinders. Next slide. I want to talk a little bit about brain research. And research is really about following the money. Most Alzheimer's associations, and especially my Alzheimer's Association, and I know the Canadians, and I know the English, and I know the French, and I know the German, and I know the Australian, spend about 90% of their research funds on cure or pharmacological interventions. They are, to say it politely, in bed with pharmaceutical companies. They are in bed with governments that want to cure Alzheimer's so that we don't bankrupt the public health system. And so most of their money is spent on cure or pill research. Literally about 10% of research funds go towards non-pharmacological interventions. That is, things that don't involve pills. There is not a pill that's going to help you rebuild your self-esteem when it's been destroyed because no one is talking to you. And people keep looking at you with those cow eyes and think there's something wrong with you and tear up when they talk about you. There's no pill that's going to bring your sense of self back. if you've lost it. A pill won't bring you friends. A pill won't bring you love. Yet only 10%, actually less than 10%, of research funds are spent on research in how, as human beings, we can help each other. Not just give you a bottle of pills or a prescription, but how can we help each other? How can we more effectively listen to people living with dementia? We don't teach empathetic listening to caregivers. Caregivers try to be empathetic to us, but I think it's very difficult for people without dementia to be truly empathetic to people who have dementia because they're operating with two different hippocampuses that have two different sets of abilities. How do we more effectively communicate with people living with dementia? We ought to be researching that now. Why do we just throw up our hands and say, well, I can't figure him out. He won't talk to me. He just sits there mute. He doesn't shake his head. He won't blink his eyes. He's not like me. He doesn't use words, so I can't communicate to him. I don't believe that's true. I think we could refine ways of appreciating nonverbal communication. I think there are ways that we can encourage people with dementia to speak more than we do. I think most of us living with dementia withdraw way too soon because we're just not stimulated anymore. How could we research to improve the quality of lives of those living with the symptoms of dementia? Do you ever hear anybody talking about the quality of our lives and how to improve it? Or do they talk about how it's deteriorating? We're defined by our deficits, not by our strengths. We're not defined by our humanity. We're defined by our lack of humanity. And that's just wrong-headed. It's the wrong way to see us, damn it. I could just get mixed up, worked up over this. Next page.
Richard?
Research is about following money. Research is about following the power. And the power to influence people in our society belongs to large organizations. They know how to shape you into buying the right kind of toilet paper. They know how to shape you into buying the right kind of car. They know how to shape you into spending money you don't have by borrowing. That's where the power is. In my country, my government has just given up on supporting people with dementia. And now our national plan is about supporting people who don't have dementia. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't support caregivers, but I am saying that most of the research that our federal government does about $500 million a year of research on Alzheimer's, is on cure research. The National Institute of Health is not a friend of people with dementia. It is a friend of the Full Employment Act for people who are researchers about dementia. That is just an ugly and unpleasant truth. And I think it's that way in most countries. When they get around to writing a national plan, first of all, they don't include people with dementia on the plan writing. Sometimes they bring them in after they've written the plan and they feel a little guilty, or they get a little pushback from people with dementia. But we're not the first ones they go consult. And second of all, the people they do consult are in bed with the researchers. And the researchers and the people in bed with them have convinced themselves that the best way to serve people with dementia is to cure them of it. That is one way of serving us. But you know, they've been serving that empty plate for 25 years. I think it's time for them to bring out another plate. I think it's time for them to put more on our plate. I'm not saying don't put anything on their plate, but I'm saying the disproportionate way in which we spend funds. You know, people walk to cure. People run to cure. They wear purple to cure. They organize teams to cure. But what they're actually doing is doing all that to raise money so the money will cure and so that the cure will meet the needs of those of us living or not living with dementia. I just think that's a morally bankrupt way of dealing with a disability. If we said to people in wheelchairs, we're not going to do any more research about wheelchairs. We're going to see how we can come up with ways to keep you from losing your feet or losing your sense of balance. And when we find that, we won't need wheelchairs anyway. We don't do that. People with the disability that require wheelchairs have already been up in arms about that. They forced people in power, forced people with money, forced politicians, forced their own cancer society and disability societies to create ramps for people with disabilities. Well, where are the ramps for people who have dementia? Who's doing the thinking about ramps? Who's looking for creative ways to require all businesses to have ramps for people? Well, Norm Macdonald is over in England. He's done a marvelous job in his own community of teaching all the businesses there how to recognize people with dementia and how to deal with them as adults. He's building ramps for people to still walk around his community, still use public transportation, still not be afraid the police are going to taser them because they walked out in their backyard naked, still recognize people, our whole people in their community. We can do more of that. It should be an embarrassment to Alzheimer Society and to people who are claimed to be our champion, that we have to champion ourselves in order to get them to focus on meeting our needs that everybody agrees we can't meet anymore. It's just back asswards. We're climbing uphill and they're sliding downhill, is the way I see it. Okay.
Richard, I think Jessica had a question.
Jessica.
Sorry to interrupt. I was actually wondering, because there's been a lot of information shared, if anyone at this point had any questions or I don't know how much longer, Richard, I don't want to cut you off, but I was wondering how much longer the presentation is.
This is a good time to pause.
Okay. So I was wondering, I don't know if any of your participants online or anyone here at the Alzheimer Society and Alzheimer Cafe would have any reflection, comments, remarks. Richard's given a very large overview of different subjects that are really interesting and touched upon different issues. Everyone?
You don't have to agree with me.
Oh, we have one here. Hold on a moment.
The compliment. There hasn't been one extraneous thought proposed with. That's fantastic.
Can you hear, Richard?
I saw his lips move and I heard him, but I couldn't make it out.
Yeah, that's a compliment. There hasn't been one extraneous comment coming from you. That's fantastic.
He's sending you a compliment.
Oh, you mean nobody interrupted me? Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, that's all.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah. Is there anyone else in the room who might want to?
Yeah, Richard, you were mentioning about how the government or they create ramps for those who are disabled. Do you have any suggestions on ramps for those who have Alzheimer's? What are some of the things that society could do to support those who have Alzheimer's, those kind of aids?
Yeah, the society could lead the effort to make Montreal a dementia-friendly city. It could look at its public transportation system and see how you can help people who become confused when they're on a bus, who lose their sense of direction. It could work with training people in hospitals, in emergency rooms, about how to respond to somebody who comes in with dementia. When I went for my cancer surgery, I went to every doctor that I knew I was going to see before I went into the hospital and told them I had dementia and told them I expected to be confused when I got in. He helped me. Would he take more time with me? Would he write things down for me? If I put up a whiteboard on the wall, would he write things on it? Because I would forget that he'd even been in the room. And I left the hospital without one thing being written on the wall. I left the hospital without one word of dementia in my charts. And I was in the hospital for 10 days. Now, an Alzheimer Society could spend their life training hospitals, doctors, nurses, the person who wakes up every 4 hours to take your blood. It means to wake someone up with dementia as opposed to waking someone up who doesn't have dementia. What it means about walking into somebody's room who has dementia, where you know their name, but they don't know your name. That's one thing I think that Alzheimer's societies could take a lead. I think Alzheimer's societies should be the champions of psychosocial research. We should be in psychology and neurology departments saying, you're not going to make a buck off of this kind of research, but this is what the government needs to fund, because drug companies won't come in and fund this kind of thing, because we can't come up with a happiness pill. We can't come up with a better organizing pill. We're going to come up with tricks, essentially. I call them tricks. For instance, for a long time, my family used to keep track of the number of times I used to ask them questions. They would say to me, well, that's the third time you've asked me that, you know. And I would say to them, well, thanks, I'm glad you're keeping count, but understand that this is the first time I've asked you this question. Well, I came up with the idea that if I asked somebody a question a second time, said I couldn't remember what the answer was in the first time, it was obvious that the answer was important to me. So why didn't they write it down on a little index card and say, well, the next time you think about this question and you can't find the answer, just take this index card out of your pocket and I'll give you the answer. And that'll save you from having to run me down. Those are the kinds of things that I think Alzheimer's associations do. When I was first diagnosed, I went to visit my local chapter. And I walked in, and they had posters all around the room on how to Alzheimer's proof your house. Put those little child guards in the plugs, so in case I stick my finger in the plug, I won't electrocute myself. Turn off the garbage disposal, hide the light bulbs, put those little child guards on the cabinets. Those are all disabling things to me. They are not going to help me feel like I'm a whole person. Why don't we label the cabinets? Why don't we put pictures of things on the outside of the cabinets so that I don't have to go through all the cabinets to find where the hell the glasses are, because I can never remember where they are? Why don't we put the words there? Why don't we color code the cabinets? I mean, there's a million ways we could enable people rather than disable people. And it's changing a mindset. I'm not saying that caregivers are not bright people, that Alzheimer's societies are not smart people, are not bright, don't care about us. It's that the way it manifests itself debilitates us rather than enables us. It gets us to see ourselves as being incapable rather than still capable. So I'm preaching more of a mindset change to people, because I honestly believe I have enough faith in everyone who loves somebody with Alzheimer's that if they could see us differently, if they wouldn't see us as dying, they would put the effort that goes into their crying at night because they realize that more of us is going to be dead tomorrow than is dead today. And they would put it into finding ways that we could continue to live a full life today and tomorrow. So I'm really asking other people to just reframe themselves. I don't mean to criticize individual initiatives, but that's the only way I can point them out to people about how this has this unintended consequence rather than this having a consequence. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Richard, can I come in?
Sure, go ahead, Peter.
I'm more than happy with much of what you've said. I think your presentation, as always, is informative and extremely useful. However, there are obviously things I don't disagree with so much as would like to redefine from my point of view. I believe that our biggest problem is not so much our understanding, but our use of the language that we've been presented with. So take, for instance, the word dementia. Many people talk about having dementia. In your case, you define it a little better by talking about dementia, most probably Alzheimer, of the Alzheimer's type. I think I paraphrase you correctly. In my case, I talk about Lewy body or dementia with Lewy bodies. Dementia, of course, if you look at the dictionary, is a synonym. Is not a condition in itself, and it is a collection of lots of different conditions. And we all know that there are well on 100 different variants of dementia. We've cited Alzheimer's and we've cited Lewy bodies, and we could cite lots and lots of other ones. So I think the way we use the word dementia is wrong. Likewise, if we talk about memory, I think we tend to use or misuse the word memory. We tend to assume that it is memory as defined, I don't know by whom, which is the process of remembering and forgetting, as being our major problem. The problem is not remembering an event always, it's remembering how to do things. If somebody has Lewy bodies, they don't necessarily have a bad conventional memory. They forget how to use that communication network between their brain and, say, coordinating their hands properly or coordinating their movement. You mentioned people in wheelchairs. I sit in a wheelchair most of the time. I'm not today in my study, but when I'm outside, I sit in a wheelchair simply because I can't use my legs effectively. I don't see that as a problem. It's an inconvenience, but it's not a major problem. It's not a memory problem in the conventional sense. It's a redefinition of a type of memory difficulty, a communication difficulty that my brain has in coordinating what I want to do with what I actually do. And then finally, if I can just touch on one point, you did in fact cite an individual in the UK called Norms, or Norman, to give him his real name. And yes, he's a marvelous advocate for people with dementia. But I always hesitate in citing individuals because he is not the only person who does real things for people with dementia. I could name numerous other people who've been working, for instance, to ensure that people can work effectively with cash machines. People with a dementia can work with cash machines, which is not the conventional way of working with cash machines. And people who have been working with the banks here in the UK, in England, Scotland, Wales, and so on, to ensure that a person with a diagnosis of dementia can effectively use a cash machine in the same way as anybody who doesn't have that sort of impairment. And there are many, many other examples that I could give. So yes, the way the population at large tend to use the language and tend to view us and tend to concentrate on research and tend to concentrate on curing the condition is not the right focus. The right focus should be dealing with us.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
Amen to what you
Can
say.
I say something?
Well, hang on one second. I've actually had people sending me messages. But first, Jessica, I just wanted to check in with you to see what your timing was. We have a few people here who want to talk about their experiences of dementia, living in dementia-friendly or not dementia-friendly communities.
Unfortunately, we have about 8 more minutes or so before we're going to have to wrap up for this time.
Okay.
But I think it's definitely something that we can do again and organize in a way that we can connect with you on a more ongoing basis. And this would be maybe the first of many.
Okay. Okay.
The woman who just asked to ask the question could go ahead. I'm going to sort of just check in with the room here and see if there's anything else that someone from our audience would like to ask or say.
Okay.
And Richard, I don't know if you have any closing remarks or messages you would like to leave us off with.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to suggest then that Jeannie Lee, you go ahead and talk about your Handy Dart experience. And then Sue, you can talk and then we'll let Richard wrap up. Check in with Montreal again.
I just want to say, I went to get a handyman pass because I was getting lost on the transfers from bus to bus. When I went in, they gave me a test to see if I could walk over rough terrain. They asked me if I could walk 3 blocks to the bus. They asked me if I could walk around this block where they didn't have any signs where to go. Anyhow, it went on and on and on and on. And the only thing I flunked was getting back to the same floor that we left on. But I wrote articles to my to the newspapers and to everyone here, and I gave them some suggestions on what to have. You know, handicap wasn't only physical; that it's mental also. And so I went on the on TV and got things changed a little bit. I said, you know, I can walk 10 miles, but I can't get back home because I'm lost. You know, and so I just went into detail with them. But it's, you know, you just got to work on getting things changed.
Great. Good for you. Good for you. Sue?
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, much the same thing because I have PCA. If I say I have Alzheimer's, they assume I've got problems. They don't know anything about for visual. So every time you mention it, they assume it's going to be memory, and that's sort of already taking, you know, putting a stamp on you when it's not even true. But I have found that if I can use the word, give them an example, for instance, in restaurants where it bugs me, hell, I can't read because it's the script is so bad and it's so squirrely and that I can't read it, or it's very, very dark. So I sort of tell people, I give them a little hint, I've got some vision issues. They go, oh, they kind of get interested. It's a different, and then they can help me specifically with the problem as opposed to telling them I've got Alzheimer's, where they immediately think I have this whole other set. But right now I don't.
Interesting.
So I just think we can't, you know, that's one way to get around using those words is what's the problem, as you're saying. And if they can have if they know the problem, they're usually a little bit better.
Yeah. Interesting. Thanks, Sue.
We need to spend time talking to each other like we do right here now, so that we can have the benefit of everybody's experience, because we don't know how to say the things the right way. But each one of you probably has some brilliant insight into how you get along in your day, that if you would share it with us, if you would stand up and speak out to each other when you come to these cafes, we could all go home much, much better prepared to engage the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's an excellent comment, Richard, and a good way to help us maybe wrap up. There's been an incredible amount of really interesting and personal information that we don't always get to speak about. And we really appreciate you taking the time. And like you said, when people give their tips and experiences from what they face, you know, on their day-to-day living, we can all better our understanding and our approach. And I think it'll take a community at large to really better be able to live together, so that we're all more aware and more sensitive to other people's needs and listening and talking and asking the right questions rather than deciding for others. So I really deeply appreciate it, and I'll speak on behalf of the full room here. I don't know that you get the right idea from based on our snapshot on the screen, but we've got
lots of us here.
There's lots of us in the room here. Some Alzheimer Society of Montreal. There's people in the room who have the diagnosis of some form of dementia. There's also caregivers that are sitting alongside with their family member or friend. And there's other also community people who work in the area of dementia or providing care directly. And then people who might just be interested in the topic. So it's quite a large mixed audience, and I'm hoping that we can arrange this again so we can continue the conversation, because it doesn't stop here. I think it's just a starting point. So we'll discuss the details of how to keep this going.
Thank you.
But thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe we can all give
the real value. The real value to this is not in what I say, it's in what you say to each other when you're driving home today. It's in what you say at your next meeting. It's in picking up a couple of email addresses from people in the room and making new friends. It's from us connecting with each other, because we can sit and beat our gums to each other. We need to talk to each other is what we need to do, and listen and become friends with each other, because otherwise we're just voices in the wilderness. And we're reaching a point now where there's enough of us where we need to come out of the wilderness with Moses and be a people. We need to be the people of dementia. We need to have a voice. Peter is right. We don't have one voice. We have hundreds of them now. But until we start speaking together, it's just one voice that people hear. So I really urge you all to stand up and speak out, to use the internet to connect with each other. Thanks for inviting me here.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Jessica, I've tape recorded Richard's presentation and the questions afterwards, and I'll send you the link to that. So if people want to review the recording on YouTube, they can do so.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
And I also wanted to mention again that Richard and I run weekly support groups of people with dementia. It's done online, and it's the same people every week, so that people build a safe and comfortable relationship with each other. And it's a very, open environment for this kind of sharing that we've experienced today, only at an even deeper level. So if anybody's interested in that, I can send you details about that as well that you can forward out.
That's great. We have an email list for people at the cafe, and we'll circulate the information you send us. I also left on everyone's tables here a printout of Richard Taylor's website, so they can look him up and link to both of you, Laura and Richard, online. But maybe we can look at ideas as well for us from the Alzheimer Society of Montreal, helping make the connection.
Terrific.
So again, thank you very much. I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you, Jessica.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Wow. That was neat. Well, it's probably about 3 o'clock now. Yeah, it's 2:45. So we should wrap up. Thank you, Richard. That was an excellent presentation. That was really great. And I liked the talk afterwards about building the on-ramps. I think that's a conversation that we could keep on having for hours. And they're really great concrete ideas. I wonder how many of those ideas are captured in the dementia-friendly community movement that, well, there's a few of them out there. There's different groups doing different work in this area. Some sort of quietly in their own communities. Some others are like the Purple Angel movement that we've seen. I'd be interested in knowing about, what kind of concrete suggestions they provide to businesses and to organizations and to hospitals when they put their label on their window. I guess that's the part that I would like to know.
You know, it's very good when we get together and talk to each other, but when somebody from the Alzheimer Society says, well, what can we do for you? You're the Alzheimer Society, for God's sakes. You know, I mean, it's good that they ask us, but they should be telling us what they could do for us, not just depending on us. Because otherwise, they're only as good as we are, and we're not too good at defining what our needs are, and we're getting worse at it. I don't see that as a sign of progress. People just don't get it. They don't want to take the personal responsibility.
Laura?
Yes?
Oh, I met the new CEO of BC. It's a woman, Alzheimer's this morning. She seemed very interested in patients. She's quite different. She comes from a family with totally different. She was a nurse. Her husband's a doctor and other things, but she seems quite open to. Because I was talking a lot about here. Patients, you know, we want the voice. And people were generally pretty good about that, picking it up and interested and wanting to talk some more and wanting me to go other places and talk.
Oh, good. Finally. That time, Sue.
Oh, that's good.
But she's interesting. Yeah, that woman's the new one. I think she'll be different.
Good. I hope so. That's great.
I was the only red blazered person. Everybody else was in black. I threw all my black away when I retired.
On the question, Peter, on the question of societies, I share Richard's views on that subject 100%. Here in the UK, we've had a big push to get the government to work on side. But unfortunately, we have a lot of politics. When I say politics, I don't mean politics with a capital P, although that exists. I mean politics in the sense of people trying to do better than somebody else.
Yeah.
And one of the worst people at doing this, regrettably, is our Alzheimer Society now. They are more concerned about their own glory than they are concerned about the people that they're there to represent, which are the likes of me and others like me. You, in fact, if you were in this country. And in fact, you, if you are like me in the world as well, because they've got to have a worldly view, you know. And it does continue to irritate me that these people sit in their little offices collecting very big salaries without due regard for the people that they're there to serve. And I use the word serve quite deliberately.
Yep. Somebody told me a story. There's a fella down in Tampa, Florida, that's doing a program of wristbands for people with dementia in hospitals. And he goes into hospitals and trains them about what dementia is. And then the hospital buys the wristbands and puts that on people with dementia. And he went to our National Alzheimer's Association and said, geez, this is taken off and I don't have the money or the time to do all this. Would this be a program you'd like? And they said to him, well, we'd have to charge $10,000 a hospital to install the program. And we'd want to be in charge of it.
Such a simple program. Yeah.
That's the world we live in.
Yeah, it's true.
Does every Alzheimer's have it that, because they mentioned it today as one of their things where they will put money into an idea, a new ideas thing? Does every one of them have that? Is that part of the...
A new ideas thing or the wristband?
Well, no, just going to them, they have a program, they say, in BC, that you can go if you have a good idea to do something, and if they can help.
Wow.
They'll help. I wondered if that was common to all.
England has a wonderful program like that that is very well funded. A lot of money, really a lot of imaginative things being done on the local level. In the United States, the Alzheimer's Association gives $500 grants to local chapters.
Oh, okay.
But they send out the list of things they can pick from.
Oh, that's destroying the whole reason.
And of course, they have to come to Chicago to get trained in their $500 program. So there's not much money for the program, and it only lasts one summer at a time. But England has really, I don't know, they just have a different sense of community there, it seems to me, than we have in the United States.
Richard, that's true in part, but when you're here amongst them, they are very, very discriminatory. And if you show too much initiative, then I'm afraid they try and turn you off. And that's the thing that I find most annoying. We've got all sorts of excellent people around who can make major contributions, but unless you are, you know, the flavor of the month, or you are somebody who doesn't cause waves or criticize, constructively criticize, then, you know, you're a person not to be talked to.
Yeah.
That's certainly where I am right now. The response of my organization that I attend was I became what they call upset because I was trying to verbalize much of what I cannot verbalize, what Richard says. And their response was to call my husband to see what they could do so that I wouldn't be so unhappy. Well, and I speak pretty well. I'm an old college employee, so I'm pretty well spoken, and I frighten them. But I'm an ambassador to the Alzheimer's Association. I'm going to DC, as are a couple of people on here today. And I don't know how to infiltrate them other than to be myself, but they see me as out there, threatening, and everything you all have said today. And I can go one by one. I can go be what I am in my town, and I'm out there. I'm in the media here, but I don't know how to infiltrate all that we've said today. It's very disheartening and depressing for me. I don't know what to do other than to be myself, and then I am seen as an agitator.
I've been posting on a thread that the Alzheimer's Association runs, and of course I'm the only one with dementia that posts on it, and everybody just gives speeches to each other about how fine a job they're doing. And somebody wrote the other day and said, "You're so bitter. Why are you so bitter?" And I said, "You confuse bitterness with frustration. You confuse a 10-year vision of the future with a 5-year vision of the future." They just don't get it. You're right, Amy.
Amy, I wanna let you know that I enjoy having that role with my local chapter. I'm the thorn in their side, but yet when they need something or they have questions about anything, I'm the first person they call, even though I'm the thorn in their side, because they want my input. So I kind of enjoy having that role and trying to get them motivated to change. I've got an excellent chapter in comparison to a lot of the chapters, but that's the way they're going to learn. The only way is to keep saying what you got to say. Sooner or later, somebody's going to hear it and somebody's going to take interest, and you'll make a difference.
Thank you, Steve. That's what I try to do. And on a good day, I feel that way. And on a bad day, I leave and cry. So yes, I am the one on the billboards for them. I am in the media. I am interviewed. But when I'm told that, well, they just look at me with a blank stare. You all understand that. It's some days you get tired.
Yes.
Is your face on a billboard?
Yeah, we're having a gala, and I'm on, it's a 50s gala for the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm sitting in a 56, whatever it is, Impala. And yeah, I'm the face of the gala.
We'll take a picture of it and show it to us next time.
Oh, I have the picture. I have the picture.
I have to go.
Yeah. Okay, everybody.
I'll watch the beginning. I'm sorry. Took me longer to get back away from the breakfast.
Oh, the breakfast was this morning. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
This is,
Let me ask you about the drum circle.
Oh, yeah. I have drumming tonight.
Okay.
So I'll ask the fellow and see what he says, and then bring it back to you to see what you want to.
Okay, get his phone number. If
What
he
is
wants
his
to,
phone number?
Talk about it. Yeah.
He works offline. He's online.
Okay.
A drum Victoria, and he even has things you can follow. Class if you want on your own with whatever you want to beat on your hand or what drum or whatever. But he just came back from, he's been away. He's quite a bit in the band. Let's see what he says about it.
Okay.
How you could do this on the course,
Are you going to speak up, John? Are you trying to speak?
Oh, he can't talk. Okay. Yeah.
We need to have a lip reader. We could have somebody at the bottom who reads lips and sign language for us.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe that. So what we're going to do in May is have a webinar on drumming. We haven't done anything yet on music therapy, so we're going to do it on drumming. Maybe on the memory cafe following that presentation, we could do it on, actually have a drumming circle, and then it would be a smaller group, and to do that. So talk about theory in the webinar and actually do practice in the smaller group in this memory cafe.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that.
We need to practice it one time just to see how it sounds.
Right.
It will sound awful, I'm sure.
Yeah, but there might be a sound delay, or it might be impossible to do. I don't know.
But it'll be gloriously loud.
Yeah.
I wanted to let you know two things. The lady who did the laughter yoga on here in December,
yes,
she had an abstract accepted at the ADI conference, so she's going to be presenting.
Oh, good.
And we're hoping to do some kind of flash mob laughter yoga in the exhibit hall.
Great. I love it.
Yeah, it should be good. Second thing is that I'd like to have a logo. We need a logo for the Café Le Brain. So I'm having a logo contest.
Right.
So the winner we'll choose in the March Memory Cafe, and the winner will have a donation made for them to help people with dementia to get to the conference. So I'll put that in an email as well. So if there's any designers out there, put on your design hats and make a logo for Café Le Brain, because we don't have anything to uniquely identify it right now.
Yeah. Laura, I'm stymied from filling in the form because it asks the day we leave and the day we come back, right? It's sort of like a little, they're going to check up when you enter and when you leave. It asks for that in the, right?
I think so.
Yeah, it does. It's sort of like a little, so I'm sure it goes to the FBI and everybody else. But,
no.
But no, it's okay. I mean, that's what they do. It's a mini visa. But what day are you going? Have you filled that in for?
Yeah, I don't remember filling that part in.
Can you just send it to me?
I think yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll send it to you. Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I'll go get my tickets for whatever.
Okay. Well, yeah, we need to coordinate on that. Anyways, John, you're saying. So John is mute for some reason. John, John says he has a very close involvement with his chapter, but it's very hard to change their culture. You can make very little gains, but big things seem very frustrating. I continue to do things they ask of me because my chapter has done a lot of good things for people living with dementia and their care partners, but I realize change is going to be limited. Purple angles, Peter?
Sorry. It's a bit of a joke with me. The gentleman that Richard referred to, whose name I won't mention, has developed a campaign which is around a logo called the Purple Angel. I'm afraid he and I don't see eye to eye on that one. I hate it. He loves it.
Yeah, I have two minds.
You know, to me, it doesn't represent the subject that we're talking about, which is dementia. But there again, I'm not going to push this one. It's for personal choice. It's not for me to dictate to anybody. That I would not do.
Right. Yeah. Well, Norm McNamara is a one-man campaigner, that's for sure. Social media, wow. He could do courses in it that much. I will definitely grant him. He's amazing. So, but anyways, guys, so this has been, Jeannie, how are you working on it there? What are you doing? I mean, I do appreciate that it's such a simple idea and it's spreading like wildfire. So
I'm just speaking to hospital administrations and handing them information that I got online from, I can't remember the man's name, but I'm getting pretty good reception from it, and I'm going to speak to the nurses at one of the hospitals next week.
Okay, good for you. That's good. Well, I mean, any kind of dialogue that can be started, however it starts, is terrific. So, okay, everybody. So thank you for being here today. And this was a really unique presentation by Joining Montreal. And I like the idea of doing this again. Did you like that, or did you find it kind of intrusive, or was it okay? Or
excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll try that again with other groups that are open to it. So definitely. Richard, any last words?
No, I thought this went well, and I like the idea of us trying to connect things together, different lunch groups together, hook them up together.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's great. Okay, everyone. Well, thank you again for being here. And hopefully we'll see you at a meeting at the Minds webinar next Tuesday. And we're going to have Jeannie Lee and Richard and who else? John, are you going to be on there? Steve, Eric, sorry?
Mary.
Mary, yes, that's right, Mary. Steve, I'm sorry you won't be able to join us that day, but we'll get you another time.
All right.
And we're also going to have somebody from the Alzheimer Society of Toronto who is, oops, that's him right there, who is going to be talking about the First Link program that they have in Canada, which provides a sort of a bridge between a diagnosis, doctor's diagnosis, and services that are offered in the community to try and help make sure that people don't fall through the cracks. So he's going to be on there as well. So that's next Tuesday.
Oh, I could tell you this. Gary LeBlanc, that's the guy who's doing the hospital program down, and he's a caregiver. He's doing it down in Tampa, Florida. He's working with 2 attorneys to set up some server space, and he's asking for people with dementia to make a little 3-minute Zoom video that you would want to see. If you could talk to somebody who was just diagnosed, what would you say to them for 3 minutes? And he wants to build a library of those and then promote it. I thought it was a pretty good idea.
That's a good
So if
idea.
anyone would be interested in making that, his name is Gary LeBlanc. I'll send you his email address. He's got a radio show, and he's the one that's doing these name tags for hospitals.
Right. Good.
Nice. He's a good guy.
Good. Okay. That's a great idea. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week or
Bye.
sooner. Okay,
Thank
then.
you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.